Welcome to the Unknown Archives. I'm Elias Moon, and tonight we begin a journey into the forest moon of Endor. Far beyond the edges of familiar star charts, beneath ancient trees and woven canopies, lies a place where the past is never truly gone. Here memories whisper through the moss and the mist, and the forest holds stories long forgotten by time. In this first tale, we meet two travelers, Kael and Wren, as they uncover something hidden, something sacred, something waiting to be remembered. If you enjoy gentle galactic mysteries like this, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and help us grow this little corner of the stars. And as always, let me know in the comments, what was your favorite moment from tonight's story, and where in the galaxy you're listening from? Now then, breathe in and out. Close your eyes if you'd like. Let us begin. Whispers of Endor, Part 1. The forest moon of Endor had always been quiet in the way that only ancient places can be. Long after the last remnants of the Empire had been swept away, after the fireworks had faded from the treetop villages of the Ewoks, a soft stillness returned. It came like a mist at dawn, slow and curling, wrapping itself around every tree trunk and mossy stone. A quiet deeper than silence, an echo of something old and unseen. Kael had come to this moon not seeking history or battlefields or answers. He came for the stillness. His ship, a small round-nosed vessel the color of worn bone, rested in a clearing surrounded by ferns. Vines had already begun creeping across its outer shell, as if the forest had decided to keep it. Kael didn't mind. He wasn't in a hurry to leave. Each morning he wandered further from the ship, soft boots brushing against moss and fallen leaves, his hood drawn up against the golden shafts of light that filtered through the canopy. He carried no weapon, just a pack, a recorder, and a journal filled with half-finished thoughts. Today, he followed the sound of water. It was faint, like a memory, trickling laughter in the distance. He stepped over a patch of glowing mushrooms, their soft blue light pulsing with his shadow. The air was rich with the scent of bark and loam, with the perfume of ancient trees that had seen too much to speak. He paused as a cluster of fireflies drifted around him. Tiny golden specks swirled like stardust, dancing through the air as if choreographed by something unseen. He reached out slowly, palm open, and one settled on his fingertip for the briefest moment before lifting again, carried on a breeze. There was music now, faint and far, like the echo of a lullaby sung generations ago. Kael turned toward it, his heartbeat slow, his breath matching the sway of the forest. He followed the sound past a sleeping tree, a great hollowed stump covered in white moss that shimmered faintly in the gloom. The path narrowed. He ducked beneath hanging vines, where the light dimmed to a warm twilight hue. Here the silence was thicker, like a blanket. Every footfall was muffled, every thought stretched and slowed. Time itself felt quieter. Then, through a curtain of ivy, he stepped into a grove. A single pool of water lay still and perfect in the center, round as a mirror, reflecting the sky above and the tall trees leaning inward. Flowers unlike any Kael had seen grew along its edges, luminous, silver-petaled, their stems pulsing with soft light. The music was stronger here, though it didn't come from any visible source. He sat beside the water, setting down his pack. It was cooler here. The breeze carried the faintest hum, as if the trees were breathing together. Kael closed his eyes and listened, and the forest whispered, not in words, in feelings. A gentle warmth flowed through him, like slipping into a hot spring. He felt seen, welcomed, as though the forest remembered his name from long ago. He had always wondered what the Jedi meant when they spoke of the Force. Not the push and pull of battle, not lightsabers and starships, but this peace. It wasn't something to be commanded. It was something to be heard. He opened his journal and began to write. The words flowed slowly, dreamlike. The forest does not ask, it offers. The moon hums with memory, not of war, but of watching, of growing. A ripple danced across the surface of the water, though no breeze stirred. He looked up and saw nothing, just the gentle rise of mist, but he felt it. Something had joined him, not a person exactly, a presence, soft and old. He bowed his head, not from fear but from reverence. The feeling was like sitting beside a sleeping giant who had once cradled stars, vast and kind. A voice, not heard but felt, brushed across his mind like a breeze through leaves. You are welcome here. Kael smiled softly. He did not speak. He let the moment settle around him like dust in sunlight. The pool shimmered again, and in it he saw memories not his own, brief flashes, Ewok drums, laughter, a Jedi's cloak drifting on the wind, a child touching a stone carved long ago. All of it layered here, like moss on bark. He lay down on the soft moss beside the pool, arms folded beneath his head. The trees above swayed slowly, their branches brushing one another with a sound like whispering voices. He let himself drift. When he woke, it was dusk. The sky above the trees was painted in watercolor hues, lavender, peach, and the last gleam of sunlit gold. The fireflies had returned, more numerous now, their dance a silent celebration. Kael sat up slowly, as if rising from a deep dream. The music was still there, faint, woven into the rustling leaves. But there was something else now, a path he hadn't noticed before, marked by stones carved with spirals and stars. He rose, brushing moss from his robes, and followed it. The trail led upward, winding around tall trunks whose bark shimmered faintly in the fading light. Strange flowers opened as he passed, exhaling a perfume that made him feel light, as if the ground beneath him was farther away than before. At the top of the hill, he found an old structure, stone and wood barely standing. Vines had claimed it long ago, but the shape remained. A circular shrine open to the sky. At its center, a pedestal held a broken shard of crystal, glowing faintly with inner light. He reached out. His fingers hovered above the crystal. A soft warmth radiated from it, not hot, more like memory warmed by firelight. He saw flashes again, not visions, but impressions. A Jedi had once knelt here, not to fight, not to command, but to listen. Kael knelt too. The forest listened back. For a long time he stayed there, surrounded by the slow breathing of the world. He didn't try to understand it. He simply let it be. And as the stars began to blink through the sky above the canopy, Kael felt himself becoming part of the rhythm, of the slow turn of the moon, of the quiet song beneath the soil, of the story still being told in roots and wind and distant light. He stayed until the moon crested high above the trees, casting silver ribbons through the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, an owl-like creature sang a low, lilting call. The melody was picked up by the wind, carrying through the glade like a forgotten chant. A pair of luminous eyes blinked from a nearby tree hollow, curious, calm. The forest did not sleep, not truly. It only changed its rhythm. It softened. He wandered slowly, tracing his steps back down the slope, though now the air felt different, as though the land itself had breathed him in and held him in its memory. He came upon a second clearing, one he hadn't seen before. In the center stood a ring of stones, and within that ring, smooth white feathers were tied to branches in delicate spirals. A totem, a marker, or something older. The breeze stirred the feathers, making them sing. He listened, and the song was not of now. It was of before, of Jedi long past who had walked here under twin moons, of sentience with soft feet and quiet hearts, of trees that remembered everything. Kael stepped gently into the circle. The ground beneath him hummed, and though the night had fallen and starlight now painted everything in silver, Kael did not feel lost. He felt home. Later, he wandered down the hill and back through the twilight grove. He paused again at the pool. The fireflies had gathered thickly there now, spinning in lazy constellations above the still water. The music had shifted slightly, lower, slower, a lullaby in another language. Kael sat once more at the water's edge. He picked up his journal and turned to a blank page. I have found a place where memory and silence live together. A place not forgotten, only waiting. The Force is not a tool. It is a song. A wind that stirs old leaves and tells you a story when you are quiet enough to hear it. He closed the book and sat with the stillness. Somewhere in the distance, a long-forgotten bell chimed once, soft and slow. The stars above the canopy brightened, constellations unfamiliar and comforting. The air carried the scent of night-blooming flowers, mingled with the warm musk of moss and root. And then, a curious sound. A whisper. Not of the forest this time, but of movement. Delicate. Curious. An Ewok, a young one, fur dappled in moonlight, peeking between the leaves with wide eyes. It held a stick adorned with feathers and shells, and it hummed the same melody Kael had heard all day. The creature stepped into view, tilted its head, and slowly sat beside him. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Together, they watched the stars reflect on the still pool. Kael offered the Ewok a dried fruit from his pack, and the creature accepted it with a small nod of thanks. As the night deepened, the forest around them shimmered, not in brightness, but in meaning. Every rustle, every flicker of firefly light felt intentional, connected. The force was not far away. It was here, in roots and laughter, in silence shared beneath stars. They remained for a long while. The Ewok eventually pulled a small instrument from a pouch at its side, a reed flute, worn and smooth. It played a tune so gentle and haunting, Kael felt his breath catch. It was the same lullaby he had followed through the trees that morning. Notes curled into the sky like smoke, and Kael leaned back, letting the melody sink deep into his chest. It was a song of memory, of guardians and wanderers, of soft endings and new beginnings. And then, one final gift from the forest. A soft glow began to rise from the moss near the water's edge, a swirl of light, like a wisp of fog spun with moonlight. It drifted toward him, then split into tiny sparks that floated upward, disappearing into the sky. He didn't move. He simply watched. And in that moment, he felt it clearly. The forest had shared a piece of its heart. A memory not of battles or legacies, but of peace, held safe in the roots and the wind. Kael closed his eyes. The night wrapped around him like a blanket, warm and endless. As he drifted off, the forest settled once more. The moon dipped low behind the tallest trees, and the stillness returned. Ancient, gentle, and full of promise. And as sleep pulled him gently into its arms, the forest whispered again, "This is only the beginning." Part 2. A soft wind drifted through the towering trees of Endor, brushing against the moss-covered trunks and sending the ferns into a gentle sway. Somewhere beneath the canopy, nestled in a clearing veiled by old branches and star-kissed mist, Kael stirred from his slumber. He had fallen asleep beside the glimmering pond, the one the Ewoks had called the moon's mirror. In the quiet hush of dawn, it reflected the last traces of starlight in ripples of silver. Kael blinked slowly, reluctant to move, comforted by the thick blanket of moss beneath him and the stillness that surrounded him. Above, the stars had faded, but the sky was not yet bright. That soft, lavender veil before sunrise held the world in suspension. Kael let out a slow breath. The whispers were returning, not loud, not urgent, just present, like the rustle of leaves stirred by something unseen, as if the trees themselves were remembering. He sat up, careful not to disturb the tiny leaf perched on his tunic. It clung there as if it too wanted to stay a little longer. Across the clearing, Wren was already awake. The girl sat cross-legged atop a large root, sketchbook in her lap, her curls haloed in mist. Her pencil moved slowly, steadily. She didn't look up. "I dreamed of the lights again," she said softly, before Kael could even greet her. Kael rubbed his eyes. "The ones in the trees?" Wren nodded. Only this time, they came down to the ground. They surrounded the old stone arch. "I think they want us to follow." Kael stood and stretched, bones and muscles protesting slightly after the night's sleep beneath the stars. He crossed the clearing, his boots damp with morning dew, and sat beside her. The sketch on her page was unfinished, but already it was haunting. Thin beams of pale light snaking between the trees, converging around a stone structure carved with faint glyphs. It felt both ancient and alive. He remembered the arch. They had passed it 2 days ago, hidden behind a curtain of vines. The Ewoks had spoken of it in hushed tones, calling it Ulata, a word that meant something between memory and doorway. "I think it's time," Wren whispered, "to go back there." Kael nodded, though a knot had begun to form in his chest. Something about that place. Even now, in the safety of morning, it made the hairs on his neck stand on end. But he trusted Wren's instincts, and something deeper still, a pull, like gravity, drawing them toward the unknown. They moved through the forest in silence, letting the natural paths guide them. Vines arched overhead like cathedral ceilings. Birds, half seen, chirped in sleepy tones above. The deeper they walked, the softer the world became, muffled by moss and magic. Kael could feel the energy of Endor shifting. It was subtle, like the space between breaths. Each step took them closer to something forgotten. A rustle in the underbrush startled them for a moment, only to reveal a small, owl-eyed creature with striped fur and translucent ears. It blinked at them, unafraid, then scurried back into the roots. The forest watched them, and somehow it remembered them. Wren slowed at a particular bend in the path. There, nestled in the roots of an ancient tree, was a ring of stones, half buried beneath years of moss and leaf. In its center sat a single cracked crystal, humming faintly. "Another marker?" Kael asked. "Or a memory anchor," Wren murmured. "I think places like this were left behind to keep the past tied to the present." They lingered for a moment, hands brushing against the stone's cool surface. The air around it shimmered faintly, just for a heartbeat, before stillness returned. Further along, a soft rain began to fall, not enough to soak, just a gentle mist that kissed the tops of leaves and trickled down the bark in shimmering trails. The droplets made the forest feel alive, as if every leaf was listening. When they reached the stone archway, the air around it was still. The wind that had accompanied them through the forest did not cross the threshold. The vines that had once covered the structure were gone now, peeled back as though invited. The glyphs on the stone glowed faintly. Kael felt a chill ripple through him. Wren stepped forward and placed her hand against the center of the arch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a pulse, not of light but of sound. A low, distant hum, deep as a cave and soft as moonlight. The forest held its breath. Kael stepped beside her, and they waited. And then it changed. A shimmer bloomed inside the archway, like water seen through a veil. A doorway, not to another place, but another time. Endor, long ago. Through the shimmer they could see tall beings with golden robes walking beside Ewoks. The trees looked younger, the stars brighter. A great tree, taller than any Kael had seen, stood at the center of the vision, wrapped in glowing vines that whispered with voices not unlike those they had heard in dreams. Wren reached out her hand. The shimmer rippled. Kael grabbed her wrist. "Wait, what if—" "I don't think we're meant to pass through," Wren said, "just to remember." The wind stirred again, and with it came a voice, not in words but in feeling, a presence, gentle and vast. It washed over them like moonlight on still water. The shimmer showed more, the tree being planted, the gathering of many species, and a celebration beneath the stars. The great tree, called Selenar, was sacred. It had the power to carry the memories of those who walked beneath it, not just of one lifetime, but many. A living archive, a memory keeper. Kael's breath caught. This is what the Ewoks were guarding. This is why the voices had called to them. The shimmer began to fade, and with it, the vision. As the archway returned to still stone, Kael and Wren stood in silence. The clearing had changed, not in sight but in sense. It felt deeper now, as if the forest had opened a secret it rarely shared. Wren ran her fingers along one of the glowing glyphs. "It's like a story carved into the earth," she murmured. "And we just read a piece of it." Kael nodded, still lost in thought. He could feel it echoing within him, that song of memory, of connection, of lives long past and yet somehow present. As they turned to leave, the sound of something distant echoed through the trees, a melody. Not quite song, not quite wind. It rose and fell in gentle waves, almost like a lullaby sung by the forest itself. They didn't speak as they followed it, letting the forest lead them. At the edge of another clearing, they found a hollow log, weathered with age, half covered in mushrooms that glowed faintly blue. Inside it, they found another carving. This time it was different. It showed two travelers, one with a star above their heart, and the other holding a branch of light. Beneath them, the roots of Selenar stretched like veins through the earth, connecting to a dozen other trees, all smaller, all growing. "They planted more," Wren said softly. Kael touched the edge of the carving, breath-catching. "We're walking their path." That night, they camped near the base of a tree whose trunk shimmered faintly under the moon. The stars above were particularly bright, their light not just twinkling, but pulsing. Wren lay beside the fire, her sketchbook filled with scenes of the past. The great tree, the celebration, the golden-robed beings. But now, her drawings carried an energy, like the memories themselves had found a way to be captured in graphite and paper. Kael stared into the flames. "What do you think it means?" he asked softly. Wren closed her eyes. "I think it means we're part of something much older than we knew, that the forest remembers, and maybe it wanted to remember us too." The whispers came again as they drifted towards sleep, not eerie this time, but soothing, like the voice of someone ancient humming a lullaby. A nearby tree creaked gently in the breeze, and the fire cracked in rhythm. Kael let the warmth of the fire pull him under, the sound of wind in the branches above becoming waves, becoming starlight, becoming dreams. And in those dreams, he stood beneath the great tree of Selenar, not alone, but surrounded by those who had come before, and those who had yet to come. He heard laughter, not his own, but familiar, like echoes of a childhood he hadn't lived. A child darted past, Ewok in hand, both of them glowing faintly. Then a woman, older, her robes star-dappled, her eyes kind. She placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered something he couldn't remember when he woke, but the warmth stayed with him. Then, a final scene. A stone circle beneath the roots of the new trees, younger than Selenar, but glowing with the same quiet purpose. The wind whispered through the clearing. As fireflies circled above, the memory lived on. So did the whispers. Endor slept, and so did he. Thank you so much for listening. If you're still awake, please consider giving us a like and subscribing. It really helps support the channel so we can continue making content. I'm Elias Moon, and we'll see you next time.